Welcome to episode 177 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. Today, I'm delighted to welcome snowboarding, skateboarding, BMX presenter, and generally very loud voice, according to his own words, Tim Warwood. Hi, Tim. How are you?
Yeah, good. How you doing?
Yeah, very good. I'm really pleased that you've joined us today because I think I'm right in saying that it's your birthday today. Is that correct?
It is, yeah. Happy birthday to me.
Well, thanks for giving up time on your birthday.
Not a problem. I'm at the age now where birthdays are A, not really wanted, and B, pale into insignificance.
So it's not a significant birthday?
It's not a significant one, no, just a run-of-the-mill number 44, right in the middle, and hopefully in the middle.
I did do a bit of a Google, and on famousbirthdays.com, it says that you're 50 today.
Well, firstly, I don't know why I'm on famous birthdays. Because my brother found this, because my brother lives in America, and whenever he's trying to tell his mates in America, oh, my brother works in TV and he does this and whatever, they Google me or whatever over there, and it comes up on famous birthdays. Today would be 50. I think that was an internet safety thing. I must have put my date in wrong on another website somewhere, and subsequently the whole internet now thinks I'm 50. No, I was going to say, more importantly than being 50, it also says on the internet that I'm worth £1.2 million, which is completely untrue as well. So don't believe anything you read on the internet.
I don't know how, we won't discuss how old you are because that might reveal your exact birth date, but it does say on famousbirthdays.com you are number 20 for a tourist named Tim, and also number 48 as a 49-year-old TV host.
Flipping heck. Oh, I'm the 48th best 49-year-old TV presenter.
except that you're not. Yeah. Now, I mentioned snowboarding commentary in the lead-in, and I think probably many listeners to the podcast will know you from that and from features that you've done for a Ski Sunday. But, all of that is really just skimming the surface because you have had a very long career in presenting, and we were just chatting earlier. It's include Disney, Red Bull, CBBC, Dave. So, listener, depending on your viewing habits, you might have seen Tim in all sorts of different shows. And I'd like to come back to those later on. But obviously, I think it's snowboarding that you're most known for, certainly for me, anyway. And I wondered if I could just take you back. I mean, how did you become a snowboarder in the first place? I read somewhere that you are one of an elite group of athletes who've turned into media personalities.
Well, I don't think there's many of us, to be honest. So it was. I was a skateboarder. I was a grufty skateboarder as a kid. My older sister, who I really looked up to, had a boyfriend who was a skateboarder. He had pink hair, and he was so cool. And I just remember, fell in love with skateboarding, and me and a group of mates, we all skateboarded around the local cul-de-sac, and waxing curbs and all that kind of stuff, and just really fell in love with skateboarding and the culture and the music and the baggy clothes and all that stuff. And so, as a kid, I was doing that, but also at school, my eldest sister and then my brother both went on the school ski trips. I remember my mum and dad remortgaging the house to pay for us to do these school ski trips, and I remember going to the mountains. We went to Italy, went to Sestriere on a school ski trip, and I just remember being absolutely blown away with the mountains and loving skiing. And I came back and I must have been going, oh, skiing this and skiing that, da-da-da. And my mom found a coupon in the local newspaper because they just opened the Tamworth Snowdome round the corner. So this was back in 1994. And my mom went, here you go, ski for a £5. So she said, you love skiing. So we went down there and I went and skied for an hour in my jogging bottoms in the Tamworth Snowdome. Absolutely loved it again. And on my way out, I'm not quite sure what possessed me, but I just walked up to the desk and I said, do you do, it was school, it was work experience at school, and we were supposed to be deciding, and loads of kids were off to, paper merchants or the local factory or wherever it might be. And I just went up to the desk and I said, do you do work experience, school work experience? And the manager, the guy behind the desk, was like, well, we haven't actually yet. Well, I mean, we haven't. So I ended up being the first person to do their school work experience at the Snowdome. And after my very first day doing work experience there on the Monday, whenever it was, I went and had a snowboard lesson because I saw snowboards behind the behind the ski hire there. And I was just absolutely blown away that you could do all the tricks you could do on a skateboard, but it was attached to your feet, so it was way easier. So I had a snowboard lesson that first ever day doing my work experience at the Snowdome, and without boasting or bragging, I was able to ride from the top all the way to the bottom by the end of the lesson.
That's very impressive. And those tricks, did you really manage to segue from your skateboard onto a snowboard kind of straight away?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, I was a terrible skateboarder, but I could fly around on a skateboard. I couldn't do many tricks or anything, but, you know, it's something I'd done since the age of 10, you know, skateboarding. So I've been skateboarding for 5 years or so.
It just shows that, you know, if you don't ask a question, you'll never find out. So, you know, what a brilliant way to do your work experience. And so you ended up, you know, going back there on a regular basis?
Yeah, so I did my work experience, just fell in love with the place. I immediately applied for a job to work there. I snowboarded, those 2 weeks of work experience, I snowboarded every single day. And I was just absolutely hooked. And then I got a job there straight out of school, went and worked at the Snowdome, and again, just rode every single day. And I just absolutely loved it, fell in love with the scene and all the older kids there, excuse me, the snowboard instructors, Mark Chester and John Sewell. I met all the Boardwise gang and Doug Foden and Dave Furno, the SS20 crew, and, you know, all these old stalwarts in the snowboard scene, because the Snowdome was a relatively new place. Well, it was brand new back then, so the UK snowboard ski scene were coming down, and I was just immediately plugged in and met everybody basically.
And did they have, because I think that the Tamworth one was the first to open in the UK, because now we have quite a few snowdomes. Did they have many features in there? Did they have light rails or kickers or anything?
They had a few. I mean, it was only ever we'd build them. You know, we would make ramps, and it was, the shop back then was Boardwise was called Grand Prix, so it was called the Grand Prix ramp because they made it. So we'd get that out. We'd just drag the ramps out when we needed them. There was, you know, we'd make bits of snow, and jibbing was kind of around, but not so much. We had a couple of gas pipes. We'd lie down on the snow, but this was kind of the late stage of jibbing before jibbing kind of died for a couple of years, if you know what I mean.
And what kind of job did you do? What work were you doing?
I worked in ski hire, yeah. So I just gave out the skis. I did my ski hire instructor's exam. It's the only exam I've ever passed, and learnt to give out skis, and yeah, it was wicked.
Cool. Well, I mean, I guess there's a limit to how much you can learn at Tamworth. And I'm pretty sure that, you know, that taste that you'd had of the mountains in Sestria, you wanted to get out and experience that some more. But rather than just going to Europe, you went a bit further afield?
I did, yeah. Well, it was really random. We so again, through working at the Snowdome, and I was competing at this point, and just meeting loads of different people. I met a guy. Do you know what's really funny? Well, I was trying to think of his surname yesterday, and I can't think of it. But his name was Nick, and he started it was called the Rocky Mountain Snowboard Tour, and it was a tour company which went to Winter Park, Colorado. So, like I say, straight out of school, that November, or December even, I was 16 years of age. It was my first time ever on an aeroplane, and I went off to work in his chalet. So flew off to Colorado at 16 to be a chalet maid, and went and worked in the Rocky Mountains.
How cool is that? Were you actually cooking then, or just like?
I think I was putting out the cereal bowls and cleaning the bedrooms when the guests went snowboarding. But
that is an amazing. At 16 years old, I know Pat Sharples, who you probably know, GB Snow Sports coach, who kind of had a similar path. He just sent himself out to Courchevel because he wanted to ski at a similar age, and in the end managed to blag his way, you know, into a job. But that's, you know, it's pretty young to be, I don't know, crossing continents and living overseas. I mean, what was it like out there?
Yeah, I mean, it was mind melting. It was absolutely. I'm not ashamed to say, I'd never done any washing. I remember my bag of washing. I had no clean clothes, and I was a bit like, what? I guess I've got to wash my own clothes. I literally was 16, and I think from kind of 15 or 14 when I started snowboarding, I just everything was about snowboarding. It was just, I wanted to do it. I was competing. We were driving, my mum and dad were driving us all up and down the country to snowboard events and dry slope events all over the place. And to get out there to Colorado, like I say, it was the first time ever on an aeroplane. And I've got a 13-year-old daughter now. I would never let her go away at 16 on her own. But my mum and dad must have just had this, like, well, he's got to go. I clearly had this love at this, that I was never going to quench the thirst in the UK. I had to go to the mountains. And I just remember being out there, and the Rocky Mountains are beautiful. You know, they're just the best place ever. And I just couldn't believe how fast you could go. How fast you could go on a snowboard. You know, within 10 seconds of riding off the top of that first lift, I was already going 4 times faster than I'd ever gone at the Snowdome.
Yeah, well, when you've got more than 100 or 120 meters to play with, then it's a little bit easier, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned a few times there about competing, and you said you were competing, because there's some people, you know, they've heard you talking about and doing commentary on snowboarding competitions, but you were a competitive snowboarder. And I think I read somewhere that you are still the current British snowboard slalom champion. Is that right?
Oh, well, there's a bit of, well, this cuts me deep. You cut me deep, Ian. You cut me real deep. I actually lost that title just a few weeks ago up at the Brits. But did a lot of competitions, and so a lot of the dry slope competitions, and I was a junior champion and a junior freestyle champion. I was always naturally quite good at racing and carving, and had quite good edge control, and I think that was due to hanging out with Damon Street and Dave Furno, the hard booters, and Jeremy Sladen would come down, and we'd, you know, so I used to ride hard boots every now and then at the Snowdome, because again, I just loved how fast they were. But I actually, that first season when I went to Winter Park, I was selected to compete for what was back then the GB team, but it was the junior squad, because there wasn't a male, like an older male.
Yeah, elite team,
yeah, like your junior. What's the next one above juniors?
Senior.
Senior. Thank you. Flipping heck, it's that's what happens when you get to 44. So yeah, there wasn't a senior team at the time, and the GB setup was a bunch of parents that just took the kids to the contest. It wasn't there was no performance coaches or wax techs or anything like that. It was just, you went under a GB umbrella and you competed. So that first season, I did compete for GB, for the British team in Japan. We went over to Japan. And yeah, again, so at 16, having never gone on an aeroplane, all of a sudden that season, I went to Winter Park, and I worked at Winter Park in order to pay for my Japan trip, and competed in the slalom, where I got 46th out of 48. So didn't come last.
Right. And just to kind of like clarify for the listener, I mean, this era of snowboarding was very, you know, early on. There was nothing like slope style or half pipe or anything like that at that time.
No, I don't think it was called slope style back then. It was maybe called freestyle. No, I don't think it was. But yeah, you would do, and you turn up. It was a weekend affair, you know, whether it was dry. Well, it was only dry slope competitions back then. But you would go to, I mean, we went all over, absolutely all over. You name a dry slope, and we've competed there in some kind of jam or a session. And yeah, you would do the slalom on the Saturday, and then the freestyle on the Sunday. And I would always do really well in the slalom, and okay in the freestyle, which would then mean I'd end up winning the overall. And it was always me and Elliot Neve battling for the top spot. And Hamish McKnight, the now GB coach, yep. He was very fast, so he would always, if he turned up, he'd be difficult to beat in the slalom. He was always really good. But it was an incredible scene, and just, you know, it was all about, everybody did everything, and there was no kind of, yeah, like you say, slope style rails. There were only a handful of rails on the slopes, but primarily it was a jumper, like a big air contest.
Well, I've interviewed a couple of other people from that era. Chris Moran, if they want to listen, he was probably competing around that time as well.
Yeah, he would have just been on his way out of the dry slope scene, so to speak. So I was almost the next generation coming in. But I do remember some of the bigger contests. Chris Moran and Steve Bailey and Danny Wheeler, all those incredible snowboarders back in the day. Just look at them. Oh my God, they're amazing.
And I know, I'm sorry that I brought it up, that you lost your title as British Snowboard champion, but you were at the Brits. You actually took part, didn't you?
Yeah, so basically the British champs this year were held up in Aviemore, Scotland. Brilliant weekend. But the big problem for me was the last time they held any kind of British slalom / bank slalom title or contest was back in 2000 in Meyerhofen, and I actually won that contest. So I was the reigning champion for 23 years because they basically didn't do any other contests. And so I laughed and joked on social media. I said, I'm going to bring the title and no one's going to take it away from me and all this. But I think I did quite well. I mean, the eventual winner, Iain Baxter. I mean, he built the course, didn't he? So that's an unfair advantage. And Ben Kinner, well, I mean, he's a brilliant snowboarder. But no, it was an amazing time. I got third. I got a bronze medal in the Masters. So
yeah,
can't ask. Or it might even be Legends. I think I'm even older than the Masters, aren't I? But no, it's such an amazing weekend, and what they'd done up there with the snow conditions, and the weather was actually quite kind. There was no wind. There was a smattering of rain, but it didn't dampen spirits, and it was such an amazing event put on by Stu and Spencer, and yeah, it was just really, really good. But yeah,
it was
I
great.
Relinquished the title.
It was a shame that you didn't win. Or they could argue maybe because it was a bank slalom that's different from the previous slalom.
I mean, technically, I spoke to Thomas Back at the IOC after, and I was like, do I really have to give up the title? Because, but if you want to drill down into it specifics, I was third place. I was third place in the Masters. However, I was actually the first placed English male master. So technically, I'm the English banked slalom champion.
Cool. Well, it was great to see the Brits back again.
Yeah,
and,
really good.
After, COVID and various other issues. And I hope that continues. And, maybe goes out the Alps. I don't know where the best place for it is. It's great to have it in the UK, but be good to have that again. Can I just take you back to the States? Because,
go for it.
Now you're known as, let's say, a TV personality rather than a competitor. And it's when you're in the States that you started kind of getting involved with media and making your own movies.
Yeah.
How did that come about?
Yeah, so I think it was almost the advent of the video camera, wasn't it? And little video cameras became more portable and more accessible, and being over there in America, I did that first season in Winter Park. I say season, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks over there. So just a couple of months in Winter Park, and then came back to compete and do some bits over here. And then very quickly I decided I was going back, and I actually got in touch. I was living with them, my brother and sister, and we all decided we'd all go. The whole family had started snowboarding at this point. My little sister was too young; she was still at school. But the rest of us, me, Andy, my brother, and my sister Heidi, we found that Vail Resorts in Colorado, in Vail, who at the time owned Keystone, Breckenridge, and Vail, they were doing this. Basically a visa scheme for foreign workers. So you'd have this telephone interview with this guy, Jeff Whiteside, his name was, lovely chap. And he said, hey, do you fancy coming and flipping some burgers and cleaning up some trays? And we were like, yeah. He's like, great, I'll give you a visa. So the government at the time were basically giving visas to kids from all over the world to just come and work for Vail Resorts. And you'd get your visa, so you could stay there for 6 months of the year. You'd get housing. You'd get your pay. You'd get a lift pass. I mean, it was for a kid of 17, it was like a dream come true. And we'd go out to Vail. We'd work 3 days on, 3 days off. So you just get all this time to snowboard. We were working on the very top of the mountain, so we'd snowboard to the top of the mountain every day to do the work, snowboard home every day. We'd get free food. I mean, hopefully Jeff Whiteside isn't listening, but we'd steal cookies and apples, so we didn't have to we'd eat like a lord for our lunch because it was free food up there when you're eating. But then you'd steal a couple of things for dinner, and you were living off granola bars and apples and blueberry muffins, and just earning loads of money and just having literally the best time that a 17-year-old could have with my brother and sister there. And I think we met some guys. In fact, yeah, we did. We met some lifties that were from Cornwall called the Eldridge brothers, Tom and John Eldridge, who were surfers turned snowboarders, and they had a video camera, so they started making movies. We all basically just would take the camera up and started filming ourselves and making snowboard movies. And at the time, snowboard movies were very much part and parcel of the culture of snowboarding. You'd wait every year. You'd have to wait till that November when all the latest movies were out, and you would see the progression and how good everybody was. And of course, it was filmed the season before, but it was just, a way of recording it, and just an amazing thing to be doing, really.
I love that idea as well, that, for some listeners, it's going to be quite weird to imagine that there was no YouTube. This is pre-YouTube. It was not like you shoot something and stick it up straight away. You're saying you wait until that time of year when everyone releases all their ski and snowboard videos and then see what people have been doing.
I mean, if you think about it, I just sound old now, but, no emails, no instant messenger, no texts, no WhatsApp, no mobile phones, no. If I wanted to phone my mom, or if I wanted to get in touch with my mom, I'd basically have to go to the shop, buy a phone card that was worth $10, scratch it off. I then have to phone this number, put in the 16-digit number, phone my mom in the UK, and so you'd have the weekly phone call, and there'd be a load of Aussies and Argentinians and Kiwis all standing in the line at the public phones to phone home to their mom and dad and stuff. But yeah, with that in mind, technology, there was no YouTube. I mean, videos, there was no GoPros, none of that business. So it was a case of cataloguing your whole winter and then editing it down and then releasing it in the next year.
I think that around that time then was when you kind of started producing videos with your kind of long time friend and
husband,
and filmmaker.
You can say husband.
Yeah. Adam Gendle, is that right?
Yeah. So, well, actually, me and Gendle were almost best mates from the off. He's a couple of years younger than me, but we met at the Snowdome. So during those heady days of snowboard contests and riding every minute that God sent, we just became the bestest of mates, really. And I went off to do seasons, but he was actually still at school at this point. And so when he was old enough, he, like me, gave up all of his tuition and everything and started snowboarding. So he'd come out and stay on our floor, and he ended up following a bit more of the competition path. And at the same time, he was very much into his filmmaking. So he had a video, or his sister had a video camera. So she was providing the means for him to kind of film himself, and we just would make little silly videos here and there and bits and bobs. And while I was in America doing the same, he was doing it around Europe. And when we'd get back together in the summer, we just kind of decided we could make some videos. And he actually made a video for Jeremy Sladen at the Snowboard Asylum. He was working at the Snowboard Asylum at the time, and he showed Jeremy one of his little videos he made, and Jez had the foresight to say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you make one of those for us? We'll put our logo on it and we'll give it away. It can be a bit of a documentary about the British scene. And so he did that. Basically, the first one he made was called Up Dog, and yeah, it was an amazing little movie. And at the same time, I was in America, and so for the next year, we just decided, well, let's just make a movie together. And Jez supported our movie, and I filmed kind of North America and Whistler and all those kids, and with John and Tom Eldridge, and then Gendle did the same over in Europe, and Lockdown Projects was born.
Lockdown Projects, yeah, way ahead of its time.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Well, it's so funny now because I've still got the web address and the email. My email, tim@lockdownprojects.com. And it's amazing how many people, when you have to give your email, and they go, oh, what's that then? Is that? Oh, that's timely or whatever. You're like, yeah. I've actually had it for about 20 years, that email address.
Was it Terminal Ferocity, that first movie you did?
Well, no, we made 4 movies in total. So the first one was Proper. And then the second one was Badass Big Airs. Third one was Show Offs. And then our fourth and final movie was Terminal Ferocity. And basically the movies themselves got more and more, they turned more into kind of less about the snowboarding and more about the comedy, because we're both frustrated filmmakers. So the first one had a few little skits in. The next one was kind of a bit more. The third one was 50-50. And then Terminal Ferocity was essentially a full-on send-up. It was a mockumentary about British snowboarding. So
I have to say, I haven't seen that one, but I was like looking around YouTube and I found what I found really entertaining video filmed at the 2006 Brits.
Oh, yeah.
Which I think you'd put together. And I was, I know I don't know so many of the snowboarders and the snowboarding scene, particularly from, that era. But I was looking through, I recognise that Stu Brass there, and I think that's Ed Lee there. And I was like, really, really, Matt Barr I saw in there as well. I really, really enjoyed watching that one, and clearly just having a lot of fun there, right?
Yeah, it's, that's, we had these video cameras, which gave us so much kind of, I don't want to use the word gave us access, but it kind of did give us access to just doing whatever we wanted. And, our movies were supported by Jeremy Sladen, who essentially it was his marketing material for the year. We'd make these snowboard movies, we'd print them to DVD. Jez would print 20,000 copies and give them away from the shop. And the movies were also supported by people like Red Bull, and we did a lot of work with Stu Brass, Spencer Claridge at the Brits, and ended up, filming out there and doing loads of bits and bobs. And so it really gave us this kind of like a license to just kind of go places and do cool stuff and film with people. And like I said, Red Bull supported us, so they then turned around to us and said, oh, can you come and film our team trips? So we went and filmed all their team trips with all the Red Bull athletes, and subsequently meeting then the likes of G. Atherton and Andrew Cotty and surfers and skaters, and immersing ourselves in those worlds. And at the time we were making, like you said, those videos of the Brits, those lip sync music videos. So we'd basically film people and we'd make our own music videos and just doing loads of random bits and bobs, which ended up leading us to working on a movie set. We ended up working on the movie Chalet Girl.
Right, yeah. Oh, I love that movie. I'm guessing a lot of listeners will have seen it. I know it was filmed in St Anton because I went out there and had a look at some of the areas that they filmed it. Felicity Jones, I think, is the actress who then, went on to become a big star in Rogue One, Star Wars and other such things. What was your involvement with that then?
So again, through our through the Snowboard Asylum videos and doing these lip sync music videos and just random bits, we did some work for Roxy, and we were just doing some snowboard videos with them, with the Roxy team, and Tora Bright and Amy Fuller and Kirsty Buas, all the old snowboarders from back in the day. And when Chalet Girl came out, they were sponsored or supported by Roxy. All the cast and crew were in Roxy gear, and Roxy actually said to the movie people, they said, "Oh, we'd like some snowboard consultants out there." And they were like, okay. So they basically sent me and Gendle along to kind of be on set with all these A-list, Bill Nighy and Brooke Shields and everybody, to be snowboard consultants and make sure that they were filming snowboarding in a core way and that it was true to snowboarding. But of course, we got out there and they were like, "You little rats are coming nowhere near our movie. You go off over there." So basically, we decided when we were out there, we're like, well, they wanted us to film. They were like, "You could just film some behind the go and film some behind the scenes," that like just kind of brushing us off. They were like, "Just get out of our hair." So we're like, okay. So we decided we would film one of our lip sync music videos, and as a behind the scenes kind of feature for afterwards. And we ended up making good friends with Bill Nighy, because Gendle's a Man United fan and so's Bill Nighy, so they kind of really hit it off with the mutual love of Man United, and we watched the Champions League together out there and stuff. And anyway, and we said, "Oh, Bill, we want to film this music video. You wouldn't be up for doing it?" He's like, yeah, cool, yeah, I'll sing. Totally sing for you guys. So we had Bill Nighy singing in this music video, and of course, because Bill Nighy's such a legend, the moment everybody else saw Bill doing it, they're like, "Well, if he's doing it, I'll do it." So we had Ed Westwick and Nick Braun and Felicity Jones, everybody singing along in this music video, and we kind of were cutting it as we go, because we had our laptops out there and we were editing as we go. And on the last night of the shoot, that we were there in St Anton, we kind of did a bit of a showing for the directors and the cast and stuff. We went, "Oh, we've made this for you as a bit of a thank you," and they were like, "Oh my God, this is the best thing we've ever seen." So we did it to Kim Wilde, Checker Love. checkered love. So then they went, well, we're gonna have to use it. So they went and spoke to Kim Wilde's music company, had to buy the rights, and then they used it as the closing credits of the movie.
I did not know that. That is so cool. I'm gonna have to watch it again. We've got it on our hard drive here, because a bit like Eddie the Eagle movie.
Yeah,
it's one of those ones that can kind of roll out with the kids, again and again. Cool. That is brilliant. It would have been really good to be involved in that. And that, what we've talked about, just now is a lot of the filming side of things. But at some point, there was that transition over to commentating and doing commentary. How did that come about?
Yeah, so again, from just snowboarding and being at all these events and being loud and is it gregarious, the word? But
gregarious.
Gregarious, yeah. Being loud and gregarious and just obnoxious, I guess, I was at an event and I couldn't ride, and so Stu Brass, who was the organizer, came over and he gave me a mic. He went, you're loud, you can commentate for the day. So I just sat there and commentated on all my mates and what have you, and at the end of the day, he came over and he gave me 30 quid. And I looked at him, I was like, oh, what, you get paid? You can get paid to talk? I could not believe it. It was like a moment. And so at that point, I thought, right, this is it. I'm in. I could go to these snowboard events, maybe get top 10 if I was having the best day ever, or I could go to the same events and commentate all day, drink beer, and still get paid. And so the transition was quite quick, I would say. And so just ended up getting into commentary. I'd go to all the same events and commentate. And there was a TV director at one of the events, a guy called Dylan Davies from Channel 4, and he came and said, you should try some telly. Would you be up for it? And I said, yeah, that'd be amazing. Thank you very much. So sign me up. So I ended up going out and working on my first ever show. Was a show called Freesports on 4 for Channel 4, and it was kind of following in Ed Lee's footsteps. He was commentating before me, and I then started commentating. Then he moved on to Channel 4, and he moved on to the BBC, and I moved on to Channel 4, and just ended up following his footsteps and cut my teeth basically just on the job, just learnt on the fly. And I think Dylan Davies at Channel 4 was very, very patient with me as I was churning out 50 takes to try and get one link.
Freesports on 4. That's not just snowboarding, is it? There are all sorts of different events there, right?
Yeah. They basically any event. It was almost ad funded or brand funded. So they would go to the O'Neill Cold Water Classic or the Xbox Big Day Out. These big kind of brand funded events, and basically make highlight shows for Channel 4. But because of my work with Red Bull and my love of the action sports world and free sports world, I could just kind of turn my hand to it, really. And this sounds really cheesy, but I guess because I'd competed, not to a super high level or anything, but I'd been a competitor and I knew what it was like. I could talk to the skiers and snowboarders and skaters and BMXers kind of on their level, and I knew where they were coming from. I knew when to push. I knew when to not ask questions. I knew basically how to tread quite carefully. And just loved it. So did BMX stuff, skate events, surf events, travelled the world. It was amazing. I was really
there's one question I got to ask. You said the Xbox Big Day Out. Did that used to be Gumby's Big Day Out?
Is that the same thing? Yeah. So it was Anthony Gumbly, or Gumby as he's better known in Val d'Isere, put on this crazy event that turned into this big monstrosity.
It was a kind of originally a sort of like a kind of core end of season snowboarder type of event, and then I guess it commercialized. It became bigger and bigger.
Yeah, and just ended up getting. I saw Scissor Sisters play there. It was pretty amazing.
Yeah, well, we're getting distracted there because I get that commentary, right? You're starting to do TV work. I remember different ski shows. You're talking about, doing commentary there. The amazing, the freeze when that Big Air was put in at Battersea Power Station in London. You were doing the commentary for that as well.
Yeah. But I was wheeled out for anything. I also have a. Well, it's a bit of an affliction. I can't say no to things. I say yes to everything, which is both a blessing and a curse. But just did everything. You name it, I've commentated on it and presented on it or hosted on it. And this was a kind of all before the advent of YouTube and all this kind of stuff. And, you know, like I said, just working on absolutely everything, any kind of show, any kind of event, and I just cut my teeth doing it, basically. You learn on the job, and I think I mentioned earlier, following in Ed Lee's footsteps, he was kind of trailblazing this path for a kind of a waster snowboarder to be a bit more professional, and I was just following right behind him.
Yeah, well, maybe that fits into my kind of next question, because you know, you obviously presented in different places, Channel 4, etc. But we're moving towards, you know, 2014 Sochi Winter Olympics.
Yeah,
you know, snowboarding events featuring, and you get asked to join the team. How was it like? How was it like to get that phone call?
Do you know what? Unbelievable. I mean, I think for many of us, and I don't really ever want to say this, but I can't. You kind of have to. But it's a validation, isn't it, for what you do? And I think as a young snotty teenager, begging my parents to take me to the Snowdome again. Please, can you take me to the Snowdome again? Please, can I go to Winter Park in Colorado? Please, can I go and do a season in Vail? You know, all these things that I just wanted to do. My mum and dad must have been thinking, what on earth what is he doing with his life? And they must have just seen how much I loved it. And I wasn't a bad kid. I never got arrested. I didn't do drugs or smoke or anything like that. And so they must have just thought, well, it's keeping him on the straight and narrow. He's nice. He's not killing anybody. And he, you know, what's the worst that could happen, so to speak? I can always remember my mom saying, Tim, you really need to think about saving for a house. I can always remember saying that. But it's... You know, it's you go through life and you're doing all these events and you're working and doing all these random bits. I remember my granny Warwood introduced me to somebody as a professional snowballer, which always made me laugh. I don't think she quite understood it, but to get to the BBC and to get to that level is a bit of a validation for almost the older generation. But I think it rubs off on you a little bit, doesn't it? And all of a sudden I was there and listening in your ear, you're listening to Claire Balding off the telly say your name to introduce you as a commentator was just mind-melting.
And that's live as well, right?
Well, I wasn't. No, what we just weren't prepared for it. It was it was a Sunday morning. We'd been in Sochi for a couple of weeks or a week preparing, and the qualifiers had been going on, and me and Ed had been going up and doing the commentary every day as though we were live, because I think this was the second day of slopestyle, but it was actually the first day back in the UK of it being live on the telly. And I think I told this story not too long ago, but it was a bit of a perfect storm because it was a Sunday morning. It was really horrible weather over here. We're 4 hours behind over here in the UK, so the whole of the UK were waking up. It was a horrible Sunday morning, but it was the first Sunday of the Olympics, and Jenny Jones had qualified for the final. So, you know, the whole news were like, oh, there's a new event. It's called slopestyle, and what's this? Obviously, we'd been snowboarding slopestyle for years. It wasn't new to us. It was something that we were kind of used to, and Ed had brought me on board as a freestyle ski and snowboard kind of expert to help him out, and I'll be eternally grateful for that. You know, Ed's one of my oldest friends from snowboarding, but it was a bit of a leap of faith for him to really put all of his eggs in my basket and say to the bosses at BBC, no, Tim will be good. Trust me. So. We ended up getting out there. We'd had these couple of days before, and yeah, like I say, the whole perfect storm of the event coming round and Jenny qualifying for the finals, and me and Ed are in the booth, and we'd been in the booth since 7 a.m. And then, yeah, all of a sudden we ended up going live on the telly.
Yeah, well, we have to talk about, Jenny Jones and that particular event. I mean, firstly, because it's such a key point in UK snowboarding history, because I really think that trip to switch in terms of, awareness, and you talk about the number of people who were tuning in. And, you'd known Jenny Jones for a long time, first ever Olympic medal on snow. She was the oldest competitor in the final, I think. Quite significantly as well, at a very exciting moment. Very exciting. Lots of a debate as to whether yourself, Ed, and I think Amy Fuller was in the box there with you as well, got carried away. I'm sure you've heard these. I thought I'd read out a couple of quotes, which I bet you'll appreciate. The Daily Mail described you as immature idiots. And someone in Below the Line said, I hope the BBC snowboarding commentary team get buried in an avalanche. What? And then I've got another one where they said, I want a refund on my bit of the license fee paying for the appalling slopestyle commentators. I sometimes write for the Telegraph, and while I do my best not to get too engaged, I do read the Below the Line comments, because I've written a few things about sustainability and electric cars and this and that. And it's just not a good way. Don't feed the trolls is what they say.
Yeah.
But basically, you were in the moment. You were incredibly passionate about it. If people haven't listened to it, they can track it down. But, how does it feel looking back on that now?
I mean, if it would be this, if we went back in time and did it again, it would be exactly the same. I can almost guarantee it, because it was the perfect storm. I've said it time and time again, but Jenny Jones, like twilight of her career, so to speak, and she wouldn't mind me saying that. She's, like you said, oldest in the field, and what she'd done for women's snowboarding, she along with Spencer O'Brien and Jamie Anderson and, the older guard, so to speak, that they were smashing the big jumps. They were trailblazing for women's snowboarding. Jenny, X Games gold medaled. It wasn't a fluke that she podiumed. She deserved to be on that podium for what she'd done for women's snowboarding. And so you'd seen this, and there was all this build up, there was all this pressure going into it that it's your friend, she's snowboarding, you can't hold it in. And it was almost talk about validation again, but that if anyone deserved a medal at that Olympics, it was Jenny Jones. All the younger kids that were coming through, Anna Gasser, for instance. We've seen the career Anna Gasser has had since. She's got her... she was always going to get an Olympic medal at some point. She's got her X Games medals. She's got her World Championship medals. But that was quite literally Jenny's last chance. And that, for me, is... She deserved that. She deserved that bronze medal. And that bronze medal is as good as a gold to her and to us, because it is a validation medal. But... Again, to go back, if we went back and did it again, it would be the same, because that is snowboard commentary. That's the passion. That's the love. And if we'd have been at the top or on a mic or live to the auditorium or whatever, it would have been the same. But Amy was very excited, though, wasn't she?
Yeah. I mean, the actual footage is amazing, and it's great to watch. But it sums up the passion that you feel for the sport and you feel for your friends. And it clearly didn't do any harm to your career, despite the wishes of the Daily Mail and the Below the Line, commentators, etc. Because you were back out, for more Olympics. You were out in Pyeongchang, and that was a different kind of situation. You had ski slopestyle, getting involved as well. And then you've actually kind of expanded out of snowboarding into other areas as well. Because when it came to the Tokyo Olympics, 2020, but taking part in 2021, you then had the opportunity to commentate on skateboarding and BMX as well.
Well, actually, I was there as a reporter, so I was supposed to be a commentator. The way that the Olympics works is it's not just an easy thing to go to. You can't just rock up and, believe it or not, and go and just do it in a sense of, it's really expensive. The IOC charge a lot of money, so everything costs money. If you want to have a commentary position at a venue, at an event, let's take, for instance, skateboarding. If you want to have commentators, that costs extra money. If you want to have a camera down in the bottom, that costs extra money. If you want to have a presenter with the cameraman, that costs extra money. So everything costs money, and everything's extra, and it's all, everything has to be justified. And obviously the BBC don't have a very big pot of money, contrary to popular belief. So as a commentator and as a broadcaster, you need to be able to span 2 or 3 events. So you need to be able to go out there, which is why you'll see Matthew Pinsent doing track cycling, rowing, and fencing. Do you know what I mean? He's got his core sport, but then he's learned enough about the other sports. And so with the introduction of skate, surf, BMX, freestyle BMX, I should say, they needed somebody that can do all of them. And between me and Ed, we can cover them. You know, I'm not an expert at skate commentary. You know, I've skateboarded since I was 10 years old, but I'm not very good, and I'll hold my hands up to that. And the same with BMX. I can't jump a BMX to save my life, but I've immersed myself in the world for long enough that I know the ins and outs of it. But I'm certainly not the best commentator in the world. But when it comes to something like the BBC, where you're actually commentating to an audience, where you're bridging the gap between beginner, complete beginner, and expert, or the core audience, you know, I can bridge that gap, and I can do commentary for that. So me and Ed were going to go out to Japan, and we were going to do all the commentary for all the action sports events, which would have been amazing. But then, of course, the pandemic hit, and everything changed, and obviously the Olympics got pushed back a year. But then with everything that was going on, they were going to keep the commentary teams back in the UK. So the commentary now for the last 2 Olympics has been done from Manchester, so from the studios in Manchester. And what that means is that the BBC now are only paying for the train ticket for the commentators from wherever they live up to Manchester, which is a drop in the ocean compared to what they'd pay if they had to send commentators to the events and hotels and food and all the rest of it. So rightly so, they got Ed in with the expert commentator. So they had Mark Churchill for skate, John Taylor for the BMX, and then Ben Mondy for the surfing, who are the best of the best. You know, they're the best in the business. And I couldn't do the commentary levels that they do. I don't have the insights or the knowledge. So I was totally fine with that. But the flip side was, they said, well, would you like to go and be a reporter? So I didn't even have to. It was the middle of a pandemic. Do I really want to travel to Japan? Don't get me wrong, I love my family, but yes, I really wanted to go.
Yeah.
So,
why would you not do that? I mean, what an amazing experience. And in fact, I realise now, I made a mistake, because you were involved in other sports as well, because it went way beyond the kind of action sports as such, didn't it?
Yeah. Well, this is it. I was very fortunate that doing that reporting role, and a reporting role is quite a glossy, I don't want to say eyes and teeth role. You need to know a little bit, but you're effectively you're and certainly at that event, you're giving a roundup to the audience. What's happening? Where are you today? Well, I'm at the hockey today. It's the women's hockey behind me. It's England versus India. England need to win. They lost their first 2 games. Whatever. If they don't win today, they're out or whatever. And then it's kind of like, well, it's hot. She's injured, she's this, blah, blah, blah. Let's see how they get on. And that's all you kind of have to do. You're filling in those little key points. I can't believe I actually did that so well about women's hockey just then, to be honest. But that's...
Yeah, it was it was live. It was like it was live again. That little red light disappeared.
But I was quite fortunate, because I was there for the action sports. And because of the pandemic, the moment your event finished, you were sent home. But because I was doing BMX, climbing, surf, they were spread out over the 2.5 weeks of the Olympics. So I had to be there from day one right to the end. So whereas all the other reporters were getting sent home, I was just hanging around. I was staying out there, and it was a case of the BBC would turn around to me and go, "What do you know about women's weightlifting?" Like, not much, but I'll give it a go. Off you go. And it's like, right, you're on men's prelims table tennis. I was like, oh, what I don't know about table tennis. So, and because there was nothing else to do, you couldn't sightsee in Japan. You couldn't do anything else. Literally the only thing you could do was go and watch sport. I was like, sign me up. So I worked every day. I was supposed to have a few days off, but I just thought, screw that. You have a day off when you're dead, can't you? So I just ended up going and immersing myself in all the other sports. But
why not? I mean, the Olympics is the peak of sporting performance. I was a games maker in 2012.
Wicked.
And so on triathlon. So I was right there on the course for the triathlon races. But a couple of days, one of my jobs was driving people around. notionally I was driving the triathletes to training venues, but no one booked me in. And this other guy said, well, with your pass, you can go to the Olympic Village. So I got to drive in there, and I just walked around testing my credentials to see which places I could get into, and just trying to immerse myself and see as much as I could of this amazing event, while I was there. And what the experience that you had, just be amazing. Not only did you get to work in it, you got to see all of these different sports, whether it's weightlifting or whatever. These are the best athletes in the world.
Oh, it's like, laughing and joking aside, I did I was lucky. I guess I did a good enough job. The BBC quite liked what I did, and they asked me back to do the same for the Commonwealths here in my hometown. And so last summer I worked on the Commonwealth Games for BBC Sport, and again, just immersed myself, worked every day, just went around to all the different events. But you're absolutely right. The most amazing event I saw was the women's weightlifting. I was absolutely blown away with the technicality and the skill and the strength of these athletes. Was just, lifting 180 kgs above their... That's two of me above their heads. Like it was nothing. Well, I mean, it did look quite heavy, to be honest. But yeah, it was. You're absolutely right. Peak performance, athletes, sport. Just there's nothing better.
Yeah. God, there's so many things I'd like to talk to you, but let's keep on that Olympics theme, right? Beijing, you already said you're in the UK, you didn't go to Beijing, and from what I understand about it, having chatted to, a few other people who are involved, that was a good call being in the UK. It was a nightmare being out there, testing the limits on movement, etc. But what were your main kind of takeaways from the Beijing Winter Olympics? Then, what were your favourite moments?
Ooh. Favourite moments. I struggled a little bit through Beijing, and I'm not fishing for compliments here. I struggled a little bit through Beijing in a sense of you do become more aware that people are watching and listening, and because me and Ed after those first games, we're known as the kooky commentators or whatever. Oh, whatever. These are the fun guys, and then they recut our commentary from South Korea. They made these little packages where every day it would be, what have Tim and Ed said today? And they'd cut in all some analogies and similes. And so you do feel a bit under pressure. And I don't script anything. That's the other thing is some people go, oh, you must write a load down. And I genuinely don't. Me and Ed just commentate and we try and come out. So I felt a bit of pressure and, some of the gold medal moments, you kind of think to yourself, have I done that justice there? Have I done a good enough job? And it was a tough one. We were working through the night, so we were basically nocturnal, me and Ed, for those 2 weeks. And so,
am I right in saying as well that because you were only provided with the TV footage, in some cases you weren't able to see all of an athlete's runs, which must make it really hard to describe.
We see what you see at home, so that's when you're commentating. It's called off tube. So you're commentating off a television, I guess, because tellies used to have tubes in them. They're flat screen now, but yeah. So it's called off tube commentary, and you get sent they send you the feed from Beijing, comes into the BBC, comes through their computers. They add their own graphics. Then it comes to your screen. You commentate. Then they mix your commentary with the graphics and the pictures, and then they broadcast it to the UK. So you're commentating. I only get to see what you see at home. You're not commentating on anything else. We do have, obviously, a little WhatsApp group with some of the judges out there, and we've got our cameraman mates. So you'd always get that little text in the morning. How cold is it? What are the jumps? What's the vibe? Has anybody dropped their egg sandwich? Or, you try and get a little something from someone just, to give you a little bit of extra kind of sense of the day if you can. But,
when it comes to Turin, then, next time around, one hopes that you'll be engaged again and you'll be back on location.
I'd love to do it. If you're listening, Ron, please hire me. I'd love to go out there. I'd love to be there. The problem is, what is it? My mum says that self-praise is no recommendation, but I think we did a pretty good job. Both Beijing and the Commonwealths and Tokyo, the commentary teams have done a brilliant job at commentating and delivering these incredible moments, these sporting TV moments from Manchester. So the question is, why do we need to go back? Why do they need to send everybody there when the commentary teams can do a good enough job? But actually, the one thing that all of the staff at the BBC are good at, and this sounds like a BBC advert, and it isn't, but they're all sporting fans. Everybody is a sporting fan, and even right up to the top bosses, the exec producers, the series directors, whoever it might be, if they get 5 minutes off, like you said, with those credentials, they will go and just sit in the stands and watch a gold medal moment, and they realise the importance of being there and being able to deliver that experience and deliver those magical moments back to the viewer. And it is by being there, and by being there as a commentator, you get so much more. So hopefully they send us back.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for that. Evidently, being on location, I would say, is always better. Yeah. And that's it, as well as the commentary. You do features for Ski Sunday. I'm pretty sure some of the listeners will have seen a few of those. Really good one that I enjoyed, where you went split boarding with Lauren and Dom from Protect Our Winters in Scotland early in the season. They've both been on our podcast before. How was that experience?
Amazing. Scotland is. I'm quite lucky when it comes to Scotland, believe it or not. I don't want to jinx myself, but that was December. That was December 22 when we went up there, and I'd actually just come back from St Anton, and I'd landed in the UK, and the BBC had asked me to do a piece on Scotland, a bit of a kind of a look at the Highlands and what's going on and all this kind of bits. There wasn't really too much of a plan, so to speak, but I got back and opened up I was on the transfer bus, opened up my phone, Leslie McKenna's post popped up of all the snow, and it looked absolutely amazing. And I phoned my BBC boss and I said, we've got to go to Scotland. We've absolutely got to go. So I drove home from Heathrow. This was on the Monday, repacked my bags on the Tuesday, and on the Wednesday morning we were driving up to Scotland to go and film that piece, because when, Ski Sunday only happens for those 6 weeks of the year between January and the middle of Feb. And if it's good in Scotland, you've just got to go, haven't you? If the snow's good, you've got to get up there. And yeah, we lucked out. It was really, really good snow conditions. But it was so early, the resorts weren't even open yet.
Yeah, for sure. Well, splitboarding, though. Am I right in saying that's the first time you've done that?
Yeah. Never splitboarded before. And we were on the way up, and we didn't realise the resorts weren't open. So we're on the way up, and Leslie, chatting to Leslie, he's like, right, what can we do? What can the feature be about? She's like, well, you could see Lauren. I was like, yeah, that'd be really nice. I'd really want to talk to Lauren and Dom from Protect Our Winters, and we can do some kind of sustainability bits and a look at kind of Scotland and all this. And Leslie said, yeah, but the resorts aren't open. None of the lifts are open. And we were like, what? So at that point, I got on the phone to Jeremy Sladen at the Snowboarder. So I said, do you have any split boards I could borrow? So yeah, went split boarding. Amazing. So good.
Yeah, tiring though, right?
Well, actually, when you're an elite sport athlete like me, Iain, no, bloody knackering. Yeah. Really good though, and I think I was always put off from splitboarding. When you see the rigmarole of the bindings and the skins and putting it all together and the poles and all that. But actually, it's not that bad, and it's surprisingly easy. You get into it and you're just trudging up. It's like right foot, left foot, right foot, and you hit this zen. You hit this state of like, oh, I get it now. I properly get it, because it's not hard in a sense. It's tiring, but it's like walking upstairs. So if you imagine walking up a ski mountain to the top, but you're just walking upstairs, that's kind of the sensation. So you once you get into it, you're like, it's not actually that hard, and they're really grippy, and you can just kind of march up the hill, and you get this moment of, okay, this is good. I'm in now. This is sustainable. I'm at one with the mountain. This is, sign me up.
Yeah, well, it's funny you said zen, because I was going to, chip in. I mean, I love touring. I'm not a snowboarder, but I tend to do it on all of my trips to the Alps, and I just love as you say, that rhythm, you can be very mindful. It sounds a bit cliche, but you can be very, mindful, even if you're with other people. If it's a, longish hike, you're not necessarily like talking the whole time.
No.
And you're generally away from the lifts. Evidently, there weren't any lifts open when you were there. So it's quieter, you get away from everyone, and it is great. There's another feature. I'm pretty sure it was a Ski Sunday feature where you also skied in Britain, Yadmos. That's right.
Yeah, it was over the hill from Yadmos. It was a little place called Weardale, County Durham.
Weardale, yeah.
Okay. And it was again. I kind of get they send the good-looking people to go and do like the good features. Anything in America, they send Jenny. Amy Fuller gets all the glitzy ones, and I get left with something quirky. Something quirky, probably end up really wet, and he might hurt himself. Send Tim. So they're the kind of features that I get, which I'm absolutely fine with. And
we've covered Yadmos on the podcast before.
Oh, wicked!
I think that, and someone else pointed this out to me. As you were going down, you disturb like a rabbit that's hiding, and it jumps out across your path or something.
Yeah.
Happened, didn't it?
A hare jumped out, mad, absolutely mad. And some guy had found it on obviously online and paused it, and then freeze framed it and sent me the image of this hare leaping out. But yeah, that was actually, believe it or not, filmed over 2 winters. Was
it? Right.
Yeah, so don't tell anybody. But what an amazing little place that is. It's kind of owned and run by the local kind of ski club. The guy that runs the lifts is the local GP. So if it's snowing and you want to go to the GP, forget it, because he's up running the lifts, which is amazing. But they've got such an amazing ski club up there that the skiers and the snowboarders in the summer months go and walk down the run. They walk down the mountain, clearing out all the rocks. So actually, it's grass basically the whole hill. So you only need kind of a frost or an inch of snow, and you can ride down that.
Yeah, I've got it on my Twitter feed because they have a webcam there.
They do,
take a photo. I can't remember if it's every day or every hour, but you can see if it's the right sort of day for it, assuming you're in the area, and go up there. Well, that's great. And I mean, it's such a really interesting story, how you've kind of moved on from Tamworth to the Olympics, and everything you're doing now. And there's so many other kind of TV programs outside of skiing and snowboarding that you've covered. We could probably do at least another hour talking about all of them. I'm just going to say that I looked through your various YouTube channels out there, and one of my favorites out of all of them was Gravity Grandma.
Oh yeah.
I don't know how that idea came about, but you can look it up, Alistair. I'll put a link into the show notes, but it's basically a remake of Gravity starring your grandma,
Gendle's grandma Betty. Yeah, Grandma Betty. So from working in TV, we've just had all these ideas and TV show ideas, and that particular idea is the notion of Sweding. So basically taking a movie and remaking it. I don't know if you've seen the actual movie called Be Kind Rewind.
Oh, hold on.
Which is it's basically a video shop that erases all of the videos, and so they set about remaking them. It's got Mos Def in it, I think, and so that was an idea where me and Gendle would go around the UK remaking loads of kind of iconic movies with just normal people. So as the pilot to send, we sent that to Channel 4. They actually really quite liked it, to be honest. We basically gave Gendle's grandma the starring role in Sandra Bullock's Gravity movie.
Yeah, well, there's so many other things like that. Clearly the two of you got this amazing imagination. You've got loads of work. I mean, there's something else called The Indestructibles, where you tried human bouncing bombs.
Yeah,
which was an amazing one. I know you've done a series called Animal Impossible, testing things to see like if cats always land on their feet.
Absolutely. They do.
Right, there you go. Another BBC show called Wild and Weird.
Yeah.
One I watched a couple of videos of called The Nearly Men, which I thought was very funny. Like that could be like a comedy show on its own. And that got you involved with people like Mark Webber, right?
That's it. Yeah. Racing car driver Mark Webber. So again, that was another kind of idea that we had for a TV show that we thought might work, and we ended up doing a pilot with Red Bull, and it was essentially kind of me and Gendle playing ourselves. It's called The Nearly Men, and the premise is that me and Gendle are performance improving sports specialists. So the acronym is PISS, and we go about trying to improve people that we think, you know, they've got the potential to be the best. They're not the best, they're nearly the best. And yeah, so we basically, the story is that we get kind of a bit of a lifeline into the Red Bull athlete program, and we try and help what we perceive to be their failing careers. So we're helping BMXers to become better by making them watch ET and you know, making them ride their first ever bikes. And then we managed to get with Mark. We sent the idea to Mark Webber, the racing car driver, and he was well up for it. So he took us around the Silverstone test track in a high powered Porsche, and we kind of trying to teach him how to drive.
Well, I thought that was brilliant. So again, listener, I'll put that into the show notes. And currently, you know, one of your, you know, regular gigs is something called Famous First Words.
Yeah.
You kind of tour around the country doing that one. Do you want to tell us what that is?
Yeah. So this is again another TV show idea that we had. It's a singing game show. So we came up with this idea. From doing a lot of pub quiz hosting and event hosting, we came up with this idea for sing the first line of the song game. So we play the start of the song, and if anybody can sing along to it, they come up on stage or sing it in the quiz, and we'll give them 50 points. And it was a way of anybody could win the quiz at the end. And we ended up doing it for a Red Bull summer conference, and we were supposed to do half an hour, and we did 2 hours of this game. People were absolutely frothing on it. So we kind of decided, all right, this could work as a TV show, actually. So we formatted it and scripted it. We got these like 70s suits, and we hung the microphone like a boxing commentator. We came up with these judges, and we formatted it as a TV show. We got all of our film camera mates, John O'Verity and Jules and Juice and everybody, got them all in to come and film this pub, and we performed this show. We performed this game show with the idea of turning it into a TV pilot. But at the end of it, all the regulars in the pub were like, "When's the next one? We're bringing our mates to this. This is amazing." And I thought, oh, bloody hell, didn't really think of it as a pub night. And since then, we've been doing, that was about 7 years ago, we've been pretty much doing one a month since then.
Yeah, it sounds like just a much better version of karaoke.
It is, yeah. Well, our hashtag, our kind of catchphrase is, "It's not karaoke." So we go around and it's super fast paced. It's really quick. It's got a competitive element to it. It's also silly, but it's fun. And yeah, we're doing loads of them. This summer now, we've got Birmingham, Glasgow, Manchester and London monthly nights, and festivals, plus corporate shows and loads of bits. So yeah, that's keeping us busy.
Cool. Well, I'll put a link to that into the show notes as well. Well, Tim, you know, I really appreciate you giving me all of this time, especially given that it's your birthday, even if it's not your 50th birthday.
Oh, yeah, absolutely no problem at all.
Yeah, it's been so interesting talking to you, and I'm looking forward to, you know, you following whatever features you're doing on Ski Sunday and all of the other different bits and pieces that you're putting out, and no doubt some of them will get picked up by TV. We'll see you,
fingers
developing
crossed.
some of those other ideas. That's brilliant, Tim. Thanks so much for your time, and hopefully we'll catch up soon.
Yeah, more than welcome. Thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Hi there, listener. Thanks for joining us for this special episode. And if you want to dive deeper into Tim's work, there are loads of links in the show notes. Don't forget that as of May 2023, there are over 170 episodes to catch up with. I just had a quick look at our stats, and 111 were listened to in the last week. And if you're a Ski Sunday fan, you can find interviews with Chemi Alcott, Ed Lee and Graham Bell in our back catalogue. And don't forget, if you subscribe, you'll never miss a single episode. Now, if you do enjoy the Ski Podcast, I always like to have feedback. So just drop me an email to theskipodcast@gmail.com or contact us via social at The Ski Podcast. But for now, thanks for joining us today, listener. And until next time, goodbye. That's it. I got one other question. Did you, I didn't mention it in the thing, but White Lines did a defense of your Sochi commentary, and in it they mentioned this, but I wasn't sure if it was you who said it. Riding switch is like writing left-handed while wearing a chip hat and being attacked by seagulls. Was that you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.